Welcome to Probate Weekly. I'm Bill Gross, the LA Probate expert. We have this Probate Weekly call every Thursday. I need to talk to the microphone. Every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and all times in between on either side. We also live stream it to YouTube and Facebook, and we record it for afterwards. I'm a real estate broker. I'm not selling data. I'm not selling coaching. I have an affiliate link to a coaching company just because it's kind of fun to do once in a while. But my business is selling real estate. I sell probate real estate and all real estate in Southern California. And I have a team I build across the country. But I'm not here to pitch you on anything. Unlike a lot of the seminars I go on and try to learn stuff, and I end up spending 9% of it being pitched some product or service. I have nothing to sell today other than selling you in the American dream that there's never been a better time to make money or a better way to make money than in real estate right now. And I believe that with all my heart. And so I'm here to help because I'm a practitioner. I literally, put something in escrow on Monday. I'm trying to get another deal in escrow. I wrote an offer yesterday. And I need this. I really believe that in order to be successful, we all need leadership. We all need camaraderie. We all need a system. And so I've created this to get together with people every week to share ideas, share best practices, to learn. Oftentimes I bring somebody in to interview and to learn from them directly. Unfortunately, today the attorney had lined up, had something that came up, so they had to cancel. So today we're going to do questions and answers, which is really always popular. I get more positive feedback than anything. It requires a little more work on my part, so I'm too lazy to do that all the time. So today we're going to make it very participative. Feel free, if you have a question, raise your hand on the Zoom application or put it in the chat box, though it's always best to put a Q in front of it. That way I know it's a question in case we have their chatting going back and forth. Or just unmute yourself and jump in family style. And if too many people do that, I'll have to shut down that ability. But for now, feel free, make it family style. But here's what I'll tell you guys. In anything in life, the more you participate, the more money you make. The more value you create for other people, the more money you make. My first coach was Zig Ziglar. And he taught me you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people, if you can help enough other people get what they want. If you have a question, I assure you, two things. There's somebody else on the call who has the same question. I've probably answered it 5 times. I'm glad to answer it again, but I also want to answer it again in a way that helps that next person help them with their business. So if you're up today for having if you're going to be here for the next 45 minutes or so, and you want to make more money and build wealth and find some ideas to do that, if you're up to that today, say I or put me in the chat box. Let's make sure I have the right group of people. Who's here to make more money or be more successful or to build more wealth? Are you guys on the right call or the wrong call? Just so I know real quick. Okay, good. Okay, good. I think we're on that call. Okay, good. So let's jump in some questions. The first one on the call, I actually have Super Broker Dave, Super Dave Jervis, real estate agent in Newport Beach. A little bougie for our phone call, I think, normally, but we're glad to have him. Longtime professional. We kind of have tried some of the same questions, some of the same areas. And so the first question of the day, Dave, your question is?
Is there a particular designation? I've seen several that are offered by different, primarily people that are supplying probate data. Is there one that you would recommend over the other? I had done one with a guy that is a probate speaker that goes from office to office. I wasn't real thrilled about that one. So I'm just wondering about these other two. I think one of them was from All the Leads, and the other one was from a probate institute or something in Long Beach, which I don't know anything about that either.
So I know of a bunch of them. I've taken a bunch of them. I would say that, great question. And I would say that for anybody asking on the call, it also depends on where you are financially, because I'm really big on investing in yourself, but reinvesting in your business, not spending money and hoping it generates business. So to the new person, you'd be very careful with your money. For experienced agents, you should have a plan to reinvest a portion of your income, of your business income, into your business, and the most important asset is you. And so if you reinvest by taking classes that teach you more, so you create more value for your customers, that's the highest return investment you're going to have. That's the overview. So let me go through a couple of them specifically that I'm aware of. My first designation was through All the Leads, though the coach has left that company and started his own. That was Chad Corbett.
Right.
And he's created Probate Mastery. And he has a program, I think it's Certified Probate Expert. It's a little more expensive. It's about $495.
Mm-hmm.
It's now on a self-service, where when I took it, it was 3 days during the workday, which was difficult when you have phone calls, you're writing offers, you're seeing property. and he's done it into an on-demand video version, but it's 3 days worth of content. And he primarily is covering what I call the come from, the attitude, the overview, the relationship between you and your customers in the marketplace, and on general jargon, less on specific probate questions that might appeal to you, Dave, or me in California specifically. So I say it's a great one. I think for an agent who's full-time, for an agent who has the money to invest in it, it's fantastic. For a brand new agent, it might be a bit expensive unless you're committing to that business. Alltheleads.com has a coaching and certification. I'll be honest, I'm not up to date on the program specifically. I like to coach a lot Bruce Hill. I know he had a class on prospecting the other day. He's done some classes on listings. But as far as his designation class, I have to be honest with you, I took it 3.5 years ago. I'm not familiar with it. Another one is MTI Education, Mike Torres. And I think that's who you referred to. He kind of tours around real estate offices in pre-COVID days. And they sell data. They sell, I think it's probatedata.com or one of them. And they have also a Facebook group that goes along with it. I would say that it's less expensive. It's primarily about the data. And the challenge that all companies have is it's hard to be a full-time coach and a practitioner both. Most of them are not. You're one or the other. I'm not a coach full-time. I'm a practitioner. So I have this class to help people who take those classes and they learn the basics or by the data. And here we're going to talk about weekly how to actually put all that into action. But I would say MTI is a less costly, more sales-oriented, and connects to their data. And they have a Facebook group for the community, is okay. In California specifically, the most prolific probate attorney is Paul Horn. He's actually going to be a guest on the show, I think, next week. He teaches the official class sponsored by the California Association of Realtors, CAR, to get a designation. Now, frankly, I don't think the designation gives me any special privilege. I took it, but he is a master on the material, and I think that gives you the best nuts and bolts, terminology, timelines, procedures in California of any program specifically, but does not explain how to get the business very well. In fact, he and I talked about that, and I feel like that's where I fill in the gaps, and I want to offer to his students to fill in those gaps. So I think that's a good one to learn. I think that one is either $99 or $129, depending on your association. A little less expensive, you get a certification. And there's a couple others. But here's what I also will say. I've had attorneys. I'll say attorneys are very much into designations. That's their nature, because in their business, you can't. The designations are handed out only by the bar, and there's certain privileges that go with those designations that don't go with others. Referrals from the bar, for example, and other privileges that make it, I think, important to only work with an attorney who has this designation in the area that you're looking to work. So attorneys, when they see a designation, assume that's true about realtors. In fact, for most of us, realtors, a designation on average is probably 10 years old or 5 years old. We took a class and may have paid attention or not, but we got the marketing material. So I've had attorneys ask me about it. I do have a designation in my email. I use the CPE just because it's the first one I got. I think it's good. I'm proud of it. I have 4 or 5 little buttons I could put in, but it just kind of bores me, so I'm not really interested in it. So that's a long answer. Questions on that? Or did I cover the whole thing? Or did I tell you too much about it?
I think that was perfect. You gave me a good overview. Yeah, I had done Chad's and Bruce. Bruce is a really good coach. His marketing stuff is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Plus the group. I found the Facebook group has been good. I mean, we have people that get together and role play the scripts and dialogues through the group. So I'm real happy with that. I've checked into probatedata.com because All the Leads is a very expensive data source. That's running me like $600 or $700 a month. And probateleads.com or probate data is significantly cheaper. And I did one class with Paul Horn, but I'm going to have to go through and check out that designation. But no, it makes sense what you're saying. I look at it primarily as, again, something as I'm presenting to attorneys, right, having more weight than presenting to personal representatives, administrators, executors, et cetera.
Correct. Very correct. Yeah, and Bruce is a great coach. In fact, he's also going to be on this call.
Oh, good.
The next week or two. I have Paul Horn and him back to back next week, the week after. And then I have alltheleads.com coming on in about 6 weeks to talk about their data and programs and such. So as far as the price, I will say it's more expensive. It's a little more full service in some parts of the country. So we're lucky. Dave's in Orange County. I'm in LA County primarily. And we have a lot of choices. In some parts of the country, if you're listening, there's only one source. Probate data may not have data in your area, or Probate Money, who is Paul Horn's source, I think is only in California, and some counties in California, some not. So if you're in other parts of the country, you only have certain ones. On my website is the LAProbateExpert.com. If you go to on the far right, there's probate resources, and I have a list of the different data sources that I'm aware of. And in some cases, their phone number, contact information, and maybe a line or two about the value of it. If you use any of them and have feedback you want to share with our group, feel free to text me, email me, call me, and give me that feedback. I'm going to put the link in the chat box. But in some areas, you only have one or two. And then other areas, there are people who specialize in that area. Like I met a lady who specializes in Orange County, Florida, and a couple counties around Orlando, Florida. So it depends where you are. We're lucky, Dave, you and I have probably about 8 or 10 choices. Some place in the country, they have 0 or 1 choice. And so it's a little different from place to place. Okay? Super Dave, thanks so much. Okay, I saw a hand up, but I was rambling for a while there, so I lost you. If you have a question, feel free to jump back in. Let's see what other questions we have in the chat box. Let me scroll through. We have a lot of yeses. Good, I'm on the right call. Priscilla's 100% in, thank you. Tasha is with MTI, great. Good for you. If you want to share your experience, Tasha, glad to find out more about it. Do I have brochures explaining my probate business that I can share, Libby asks. I don't necessarily, I would say go to my website, thelaprobateexpert.com, and I explain everything there. Or my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BillGrossEXP. Melita says that she just signed up with CAR today and paid $118 with a certificate for the Paul Horn class. And I know Paul just updated it. I talked to him and he told me he did with a new form. So again, if you're in California, I think that's a great option, very inexpensive. And his data is good in the counties he offers it, but they only offer certain counties. So it depends. And then Mikey said, or Mikey says, the number of cases completed is more important than designations. I would agree 100%. For the new people, they feel like they need the designation to kind of get started. But definitely it's a confidence thing. And also I think it's important to know the information, to actually, the actual education I think is more important than the designation, because if you know the information, you have the confidence will give you the power to speak with people authoritatively and take their business. Priscilla says, what about the SRS designation? Do you think it's a good supplement to working in probate? So senior residential something. I'm not big on designations. I'm really big on education. I watch YouTube. For me, my hobby, when my wife's not around, is watching YouTubes to learn the skill I'm working on at that time, whether it be motivation, whether it be live streaming and technology. I've learned a lot on that. Real estate, the market, business in general, investing. So I'm not big on designations. I'm really big on me learning. Again, I think the most valuable asset in your business is you. And you want to invest in you, not the designation. You might need one if you're going to market to attorneys, but I think once you get one, I don't think a designation is such an important thing. Now, the SRS might be when you talk to placement people like in elderly homes and things like that, but I don't even think they're such an important thing. Okay, so iPhone asks, I have Property Radar, great service, as a resource, and build a list based on death affidavits filed. What are some good marketing approaches? I'm sorry to say I don't know of any. I think that there are marketing, I had a phone call today with a marketing company who was referred by a very good friend of mine. So my very good friend said, Bill, would you please help these people? They're a little lost in their offering to realtors. They're marketing to real estate agents. And this guy had this really fancy, sexy sounding pitch. I said to him, well, let me give you the good news and the bad news. The good news is that's a great pitch. The bad news is that doesn't work. And so you're going to sell a bunch of people. They're going to subscribe to it. They're not going to get results. They're going to quit. You're going to constantly sell. You have bad word of mouth, and you're going to forever have to sell to them. And I think the idea of pre-probates, from my experience, now maybe there's somebody who's, I'm definitely all ears. I'm open-minded, and I'm not the authority on all things marketing. But in my experience, I've not met anybody yet, and I've been doing these calls for a couple of years now, and I have 1,000 subscribers. I have 50,000 views so far on my YouTube channel. I haven't met anybody yet who's using pre-probate or death certificates and marking those people effectively to generate a business. It wouldn't surprise me that it might work. I'm open to the fact it might work on who iPhone is, but I'm not aware of it. It's one of those things I think that sounds good, sounds easy. Oh, I'll just call in the people who died and get the business before anybody else. The problem is there's a great YouTube I saw today, Mom's House. Again, they're selling a program. Most of it's selling their program, less on the education. But part of the education was what he explained, and he's in this business entirely. He says, if there was a list of such people, I would be the first in line to buy it. And he said he's not aware of such a list because it's not the death certificate. It's really what he calls the daughter Judy, the daughter of the person who passed, who has control now of what happens. The daughter's the one who's going to decide whether they keep the house, sell the house, clean it up, and who the realtor is going to be, or if they're going to sell it cash to an investor. And so he uses the avatar daughter Judy. And he said, if I could buy a list of the daughter Judys, that would be worth something, but he isn't aware of that. And I would agree that the idea of buying a list of pre-probates, and I have good friends who sell them, and I don't want to disparage their business, but if I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong. Even privately, tell me I'm wrong, and I'll get off my soapbox. I'm not aware of anybody who does that. It sounds good, and they'll sell the data to you, but I just don't think it's going to generate business for you. And I find the people who sell the data don't sell houses. To me, that's always a clue that doesn't really work all that well. Okay. Next question from Richard T, who's a realtor. And he says he watches my episodes and wants to know how to get started. And he wants to know how to get out of the gate. He says that there are a lot of people who take a certification, buy data, and don't know what to do. And so what I'll tell people, this is for the new person. This isn't for the experienced agents like Dave or other of you on the phone call who have made a living in real estate. This is for the brand new person or the person who's relaunching their business. You need 3 things to transform your business. Transform from zero to making a living. There's 3 things you have to have, I think, in anything in life to transform. Number 1, you have to have a leader or a mentor or somebody who has what you want. And if you think about your life, it's probably been a pastor or a coach or a manager or an instructor or a team leader. Think of somebody, and I'm willing to play that role to a degree for you, but I'm not your full-time mentor unless you're on my team. I'm glad to talk to you about what that could look like for the right people. But you need to have that relationship with somebody who has what you want and you want to do what they do. Number 2, they have a process or system, and then you follow that process or system. For example, when I started real estate, Mike Ferry was the top coach. Mike was the coach. He had a system. Every day you blocked out time. You made either phone calls or door knock for 3 or 4 hours a day. You tracked your numbers. You learned your scripts. You sold houses that way. You have to have a system, and you have to follow that system. So when Richard or any of you who've been on calls with the MTI or other coaching companies, you always hear about people say, well, I bought the data for the last 6 months, but I haven't made the phone calls yet. But the system requires you to make the phone calls. I'm not aware of, other than in rural or semi-rural areas where probate's less competitive, I'm not aware of any competitive market where you can just mail postcards and get listings, or mail postcards and buy houses. I'm not aware of that. I'm aware of plenty of markets where you can mail consistently and call consistently and develop a business based on the leads you generate. But if you don't do the work, you won't get the system. So number 1 is the team leader or the mentor. Number 2 is the system. You have to work it. And then number 3 is you have to have a group of people with you, camaraderie, team. I think Dave mentioned on the all the leads group, there's a Facebook group, a group of people that you role play with, you practice with, encourage each other. You need people behind you you're helping and people ahead of you that you then can cash in and help them or be helped by them. So you have to have those 3 things. And so when I see somebody like Richard say, well, I'm lost, I started, I don't know what to do, you're missing one of those 3 components. And I think if you go back to that, you'll find those. Okay. Magda asks, who's the person that decides what realtor to use for the sale of the probate? Is the family or administrator or the attorney? So terminology, generally speaking, is somebody passes, somebody dies, decedent. Somebody else wants to step forward and take control of their estate. The estate is everything that person has. Maybe it's their house, maybe it's their cars, maybe it's their bank accounts, anything that's not designated to somebody already. So not insurance policies typically, not IRA accounts typically, not pension plans typically. It could be collectibles, personal property in the house. So a person files a petition, we call them the petitioner. They are petitioning the court because since somebody died, nobody can decide who sells the house until the court authorizes somebody to make those decisions, generally speaking. And then the court will look at the petitioner. If they grant the petitioner, that person has the authority. Now, some people don't need to petition. For example, husband-wife, if they take title as husband-wife as community property, or they don't take it and designate it, but it's community property. If it's joint tenants, it might automatically pass. Now, these are legal questions, but generally, it will automatically pass. Some forms of ownership don't automatically pass, like tenants in common. Sometimes husband-wife, and then husband passes, and later wife passes. So who owns the property is deceded, and now somebody has to apply to petition. So to answer your question, the petitioner is asking the court for the authority to manage the affairs of the estate. And if there's a will, they're called the executor. They execute the will. If there's no will, they're the administrator of the estate. So it's the other way around. But either way, they're the petitioner or administrator or executor. They're the person assigned by or approved by the court, if it gets approved, to have the authority to list the property and or sell it. Sometimes the court needs to approve the sale. Sometimes the court has a process to verify that nobody's objecting to the sale. Sometimes the court gives you full authority to sell. It varies by state and circumstance. But your question is also a little pointed because the question is who decides. Sometimes it's the family. Sometimes they have an attorney, and the attorney will guide them to the realtor they want to work with. So who makes the decision? Like a lot of things in life, it's complicated. And so that's why I made the decision to work with attorneys as well as the family to earn that referral and then sell the family on why the attorney is making the right decision. So who's the person that decides? Each case is different. Magda, again, I would urge you that those are the kind of questions that are answered in Paul Horn's training, if you're in California, or the MTI training, or one of the other training classes. Great question. That's a basic question. Who decides what realtor it is? And the answer is it varies by case, but usually it's the person with the authority given to them by the court, which would be the executor or the administrator. Okay, another question. Patricia Castillo, one of my colleagues, is at the Mike Ferry Sales Retreat, and she says that what he's driving home is make the calls. Yeah, I think that Mike Ferry would say you could cold call or call expireds or for sale by owners, but if you're going to call probate and you buy the data, you got to make the calls. The calls aren't going to walk up and raise their own hand and decide to list with you. Dan wants me to repeat the three things. So again, to transform, I believe a person needs three things: a leader, a mentor, a coach, or a pastor, or something like that. Second would be a system or a process or a book, like in religious, the Bible, or a methodology. And the third would be a community or team members or other people in your parish or on a Facebook group, people that work together. So you have to have other people, colleagues. And usually within colleagues, you should have some that you're senior to that you're helping, and others are senior to you that can help you. That's generally in every experience of my life when people, and I've been successful, I've seen people transform or grow, those three things have been there. Super broker Dave Jervis from Newport Beach with a fantastic background asked another question. I love your question. Would you approach the attorney and the petitioner at the same time? Well, I can't call them at the same time. But the way I would describe it is I think of it as like chopping a tree from both sides. I've never chopped a tree in my life. I've never mowed a lawn in my life, true confession, even though I grew up in California. But when I watched on TV, Wide World of Sports, and they had an event chopping down trees, I noticed they would chop from one side and then chop from the other side to make it faster. And that's how I think of a probate. That I work the petitioner side and I work the attorney side. And the petitioner, I get a hold of them. Oh, by the way, your attorney is so-and-so. I've met them. I've reached out to them. When I talk to the attorney, oh, your client so-and-so, I talked to them last week. And I try to work both sides that way in a way that's synergistic. I really think all market activities should be synergistic and work together. They shouldn't be disparate or separate. And that way, when you do one thing, 1 + 1 can equal 3. If calling the petitioner helps you get more deeper with that attorney, the attorney looks at that favorably. And calling the attorneys make the petitioners look at you more favorably, then I think 1 + 1 = 3. Okay. Again, this is meant to be participative. So if you have questions, raise your hand or put it in the chat box. I think I'm catching all of them. I have some more to go through. Or just unmute yourself and jump in family style until we get Zoom bombed. I'm fine with that. So okay, let's see what else we have. So this one gets a little more technical. Does somebody need to object in order to require a 15-day notice of proposed action? NOPA. Or is a notice required once you accept an offer? So this is one of those things where, when people say, well, a full authority case, it doesn't need court approval, is easy. Well, everything in life is easy until it's not. So let me just explain. In California and in most states, you have two types of probates. You have those that the court says you pretty much can do everything on your own, but we want to check in with you from time to time. And there's limit authority, which is you have limit authority and you need to check back with us on these occasions. In general, as far as we're concerned with real estate, unlimited authority on a probate, not on a conservatorship or guardianship, different, on a probate, if you have full authority, the court does not need to approve the sale, but, this is important, but, if somebody objects to the sale, then you might have a lawsuit on your hands or hearings or whatever, litigation. But also, you can't get title insurance unless you file a notice of proposed action. Now, I say that to clients and attorneys, and they'll say, well, it's not required in this case because it's true in some cases, legally not required, because the petitioner, the executor, the administrator is the only heir. There's nobody to complain. There's nobody to object theoretically, and they have full authority. And the answer is that's great, but the title company won't insure title. You can say that you're right all you want, but if you can't get title insurance, you're probably not going to sell the property. So you might want to double check with your title company on that circumstance. If you're not in California, check with your title company. If you're not in LA County, you might want to check with your title company. But in LA County, I can tell you, I've checked, you're going to need the notice of proposed action. I don't care what the case is. And part of the reason why, if you think about it, the attorney's saying, well, there's no other heirs. Mom passed, dad passed, now there's one child, and the one child knows he's the only child, and he's handling the probate. And he wants to sell the house, and he wants to pocket the money himself, and he's totally honest. The reason why the court wants a notice of proposed action is there might be some other child he's not aware of who pops out of the woodwork. I didn't know that, he was my dad. I saw the name, and people will contact them. There's a whole industry of people who will take those notices and look out for heirs and then get a percentage of the cut. So the court will require that, and the title companies require that to protect themselves, I believe, in all circumstances. Again, maybe I'm wrong. Reach out to me for title rep, and that's not correct, but I believe every title company will require the filing of a notice of proposed action, even if they have full authority. Okay, Delania Kenton, let me see if I can get you to unmute. And
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you get your camera on too or not? Too much.
I can.
Too much good stuff? There you go.
Hi.
There you go. Some eye candy for the show. Go ahead.
So question, let's say I go ahead and pick up, actually 2 questions. So I can get probate leads from my title company, but if they're already if it says it's listed as probate, didn't somebody already do the court paperwork for that? Like a realtor maybe? Like, am I wasting my time following those leads?
Well, not knowing what data you're getting, where do you do business?
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm here in the San Fernando Valley, actually.
Okay. Well, and not knowing the details in general, when somebody files probate, either that's going to be the petitioner or an attorney help them file the petition. Now, technically, they don't have the authority to sign a listing agreement or a sales contract until the court gives them the authority. So you file the petition, you get a date about 35 days out, and if everything's done right, the court might on that day say, yes, petitioner, you're now authorized to sell the house. So technically, and that's why people who call on these probate listings call right away, because theoretically it's a fair game for everybody to go after those leads. Are some of those already sold? It happens. Complicated as to why. Are some of them already working with a realtor? Yeah, for sure, some are, but some aren't. And so what I tell real estate agents, no matter what data you buy, a lot of the numbers are no good. A lot of them already have another realtor. A lot of them are not going to work with you. A lot of them are nasty people. If I gave you a diamond mine, this is my particular phrase on this. If I gave you a diamond mine worth $1 billion, would you complain to me about how much dirt there was over the diamonds? No.
Yeah.
You would just dig all the dirt you can as fast as you can to get the diamonds, right?
Right.
So similarly, the process of digging through the bad data to get to the good ones, that's what we do as realtors to make sales.
Okay.
Makes
Well,
sense?
so that means make the call. And then, so that's
Imagine
my
that. Hold, stop right there. Stop right there for everybody who didn't hear that. I said make the calls. Yes, make the calls.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes.
So
Just
then-
stop.
then that leaves
Period. Next
What are
paragraph. Take a
things
deep
you
breath.
say
I'm
when you
sorry.
make the call?
I'm sorry.
So what are some of the questions that you ask besides are you working with a realtor when you make the call? What are some of the things that you need to say to get the lead?
So, and this is good. You're not going to like my answer. I came from Mike Ferry's school where he gave you a script, you practiced the script, you made the phone calls, you used the script, you wrote the script, you repeated the script, everything was on the script. And for some people that works. So if you want a script, go to probatemastery.com and there's some scripts there. There's also some video of him walking through that. Also, alltheleads.com has a role play once a month. They have some verbiage that you can say. They have a script you can download. Go there. I don't like scripts. What I tell people is, if you really want to learn this business, buy the data and then call them all. And why are you calling them? Be clear on what your purpose is. Be clear on the term I use is come from. Where am I coming from when I make the phone calls? Am I coming from, hey, Delaney, I'm Bill Gross. I want to list your house. Can I list your house? No. Nobody likes that phone call. But I said, hey, Delaney, I'm Bill Gross. I'm a real estate broker. I specialize in probate. I have you down as a petitioner for a probate estate. And I help people like you who are in the position to do that because a lot of work involved and often cause problems. I just want to see how I can be of assistance to you.
I like that.
And if you don't like that phone call, we're probably not going to work together. I'm okay with that. Now, here's what I'll tell you. If you made the phone call that way and you did it 3 hours a day for a week or two, you'll figure out the scripting. And so when people come on and ask for the script, in my experience, it's because they're scared to make the calls. I would just say make the calls. So it's the same answer, make the calls, okay?
Thank you.
Are we still friends?
Yes. We're
Okay,
good.
thanks for your question, good. Okay, Yelena says she sold the probate and no pay was not required. Title insured title and we closed escrow. You know, I guess it happens. I'm not here to say I'm always right. I'm just gonna tell you, I never got that through. And when I call the title company that I work with, and I've gotten to, I've called other title companies as well, but and also there's different circumstances. So I don't mean to present myself as the be all know all. These are complicated matters and complicated situations. But Yelena, thank you for sharing that. Don says, what's the best place to get all the information on the proper way to deal with a probate situation as a realtor? Well, Don, I think you're starting in the right spot here. And I have a YouTube channel, Bill Gross EXP is my YouTube channel, and I record these, and I interview attorneys, and I also interview vendors. So I'm glad to have you here. Again, the other place I would recommend you check out is probatemastery.com. And Chad Corbett, who was my first kind of probate coach. Alltheleads.com is another good place to go for information. They both have YouTube channels with their calls. I actually host a call for Chad on Tuesdays at noon. And I'm actually interviewing the alltheleads.com coach and president of my channel. So we all kind of work together. I'm not affiliated with them. I do have an affiliation with Probate Mastery on one of their programs, just to play as an affiliate. So the answer to your question is, with those three places, there's more free material that you can work with for the next 90 days. You shouldn't have to pay for anything if you're just starting out as a realtor. Joyce has a bunch of O's. I'm not sure, maybe it's a typo of some sort. Mickey's says, you still have the letters necessary to move forward with a realtor. Okay, so I'm not sure what Mickey, I don't know if you're on the line, if you want to unmute yourself and I could clarify. I can guess what you're saying. I'm always glad to make assumptions and then answer it, but I'd rather get you, are you available to chat real quick? Mickey's iPhone? No? Okay. So what I'll say is that when the petitioner files the petition, there's a date for the hearing for the petition to appoint the administrator for an estate. At the hearing, the judge will, let's assume for the sake of discussion, approve the petition. So generally in Los Angeles, that happens in the morning. Let's say today, this morning, July 21st, it's on the court calendar. What really happens is all the paperwork's done ahead of time. If nobody objects, the judge's clerk will say, unless somebody objects, this paperwork's ready to be approved, and the judge will approve it. And if nobody objects, the judge walks in and pulls up 5 or 6 cases and says, these 5 are all approved, these 5 are declined. And if you're approved, you have a verbal. The judge has said in the room, you're approved. Then, in Los Angeles court, the judge's clerk, the judicial assistant, at some point will type up what's called a minute order. And the minute order will reference the case number and the name of the case and the attorneys that showed up or didn't show up, and say the judge approved it, if it's either full or limited, if there's a bond required, what the bond amount is, and then some dates and such, and some procedures. Then the third thing that happens is the attorney or whoever's doing the paperwork has to prepare the official order or letters that the judge actually hand signs and stamps. And that can be submitted that day, it can be submitted in later days. It's often submitted wrong, gets resubmitted. It can take anywhere from a day or 2 to months. And I've seen some petitioners never get it corrected because it's just too complicated and they don't figure it out. So the question is, when can you move forward and list the property, and or when can you move forward and sell the property? The answer is, depends. And I don't mean to be vague, but some people will be careful and say you can't list the property or sell the property till you have the written certified copy of the actual order signed by the judge. Okay. Some will allow you to list the property and or market the property based on the verbal and or the minute order. So it depends on your broker, it depends on the attorney, it depends on the client, it depends on the county. In San Bernardino County, when the judge approves it, they literally take the form, they hand it to the judge, they type it up for you or print it out for you. The judge signs it, you walk out the door that day with the form. So it varies by county, it varies by state, and then it also varies by your company, whether you're allowed to market without the actual formal letters or not. So I would say talk to your broker if you're part of a brokerage, or consult an attorney if you want to know what works best for you. Okay, David recommends learn to understand the pain points of the client and how you can help eliminate them. Yeah, David, I think that's sales, right? Find out what the customer needs and convey to them that you can help them, and that's how you get business. Dana asks, I speak quickly, I guess, and I also mumble sometimes. What's the second site for scripts? So the 2 sites I would recommend for probate scripts are probatemastery.com, probatemastery.com. The second one would be alltheleads.com, ALLTHELEADS.com. Both you can search. It's interesting because the admin left all the leads and went to Probate Mastery, and the coach went from all the leads to Probate Mastery, so they're very similar. But you'll find on both of them some scripts, and you'll also find on there some YouTube clips of them scripting it and some role plays and things like that that will help you if you need a script to get started. But again, I would urge you to think about why you're calling them and just make the calls. Because it says make the call, make mistakes, but call. I think progress is failing forward. And I think everything in life, we fail and move up, and then we fail and get over that, and we fail and move over that, and then fail. And so if you don't make the calls, make some bad calls and mistakes, you can't move forward. One of my best calls ever that I made that I failed on was I was calling expired listings. I used to be an expired listing agent. And one of the people I called, not knowing who he was Grant Cardone. This goes back about 10 or 12 years before he really made it big. And at that time, his book was Sell or Be Sold, it was before 10X. And he got on the phone with me and just tore me up. And I think he just enjoyed it for sport. But he said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you should know who people are before you call." And he said, "I wrote the bestseller, Sell or Be Sold." And he hung up at some point, and I Googled the book and I bought it, and it was great. And then 10X came out. So that was a failure in terms of my calling him, but it really was a life-changing experience. Today I wear 10X wristband and I listen to his videos, and he's really I invest money with them as a company. He's fantastic. Okay, Mickey or Mikey says, if the petitioner doesn't have letters issued by the court, technically he can't move forward with writing the listing agreement. So again, Mickey, I would say that if they don't have the letters issued formally by the court certified, some companies will let you, based on the verbal or based on the minute order, allow you to list the property. Some won't. Paul Horn in his class describes how you can do it even before the hearing, as long as you disclose to all parties that the agreement's not formalized yet. So you can, this is a complicated issue. I could speak for an hour on that topic. And I'm not saying one way is right or wrong, but I am just saying I've seen it done both ways. But I will say, technically speaking, a listing signed before the court has given the formal letters is technically legally not binding. And so you need to approach it that way and disclose it that way. So Matt says you should never list a property without an order or the clerk of court approval and have a letter for your records. Okay? Matt, I think it's a good opinion, but I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is what's ethical, what's legal, and what's best for your client. And so I can think of examples where maybe property is facing foreclosure or some other exciting circumstances, and if you list the property, disclose to the client that's not binding, disclose to the other agents not binding, get an offer accepted, subject to it's not binding, everybody knows it's not binding, but they're ready to go. You resend all the paperwork. I can imagine there are cases where it's best, where that would be legal and ethical and best for your client. And so I would use that as my standard for what I can do or not do. But again, I'm not the authority on this. That's just my opinion, and I appreciate your opinion as well, Matt. Okay, you want, if you have more to talk about that, David, any significant differences working with court-appointed public fiduciaries? So that's a good question. In my experience, most of the time when there's a court-appointed, so let me go back. What's a fiduciary? Fiduciary is somebody who has an obligation to a certain party to do things on their behalf. We as realtors have a fiduciary duty to our clients. Accountants and attorneys have fiduciary responsibility to their clients. So there are cases where people need somebody to do something, they can't do it themselves, they might hire a fiduciary. So for example, in probate, there are people who hire, they don't want an attorney, but maybe an accountant or a friend. There are people who are professional fiduciaries, and there are people who just do it and act as a fiduciary. So there's another class, sometimes the court will appoint a fiduciary. There are cases where, most commonly when there's a conflict between two parties, right? This person says, I want to be the administrator. This one says, I want to be the administrator. And the court will say, well, you have a conflict. You both are arguing why you're deserving it and why you don't. And that will take us months to determine. But in the meantime, let me appoint somebody to act as a fiduciary to manage the affairs, maybe manage the property or sell the property, put the money in the bank that we're arguing over rather than wait for that to happen. Very common with guardianships where there's a minor, let's say both parents, God forbid, die. Now that the child and all the assets are the child's, but the child needs a court-appointed attorney and a guardianship to protect them. They might have a fiduciary to make decisions for them. So is there any differences? I would say when you're dealing with a court-appointed public fiduciary, you're generally speaking with a trained person, a person who's a professional. And in my experience, that is gold business. If you can work with fiduciaries, professional fiduciaries, and especially the ones who get the court appointments. Now, the court appointment don't make the high rates. So my experience is they're overworked and they're looking for somebody, i.e. a great real estate agent, to help leverage their time. And if you can do work for them, do research for them, help them do the job properly, they're going to love you. That's my experience. Okay, so Matt says you want letters because you quite often deal with the people who are beneficiary, but not the administrative executor or the commissioner. Okay, Matt, I don't disagree with you. Again, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying there are circumstances where I might present an exception to that rule. Generally, obviously, we should all wait till we have the authority. But I would say there's also examples where you might not. Okay, Katrina says, I'm grateful to his information. My friend just passed away and I hope to help the family with the property. Good for you, Katrina. And I think it's really important to come from a servant's heart. Some of the programs I mentioned, and I don't want to get too personal, but the focus can be on just selling and getting commissions. And other ones I did mention. And I think that's a mistake. I think that this is a great opportunity that if you can help people, that you'll get paid. You don't have to worry about it. And that's been my approach. I've had people call me, ask questions. I know I'll never get their listing or they won't ever sell the house, but I end up getting other business. It's easy. And if you want to know why, it's because I take care of people and somehow the whole system works it out for me. So Katrina, grateful to have you, glad to have you, and feel free to come back and ask questions if I can help. Dana asks, should we call an attorney and ask about professional fiduciaries? I'm not sure what your question is. In general, I wouldn't cold call attorneys. I don't think they appreciate it or respect it. I do know of a guy who cold calls attorneys. He was a great cold caller, and he's turned it into a great business. Other than him, it's a tough road to go, and I think your goal is to create relationships. So the problem is, if you're a great cold caller, generally, you're not a good relationship nurturer. And I'd hate to cold call the rest of my life attorneys. I'd much rather get 20 good attorneys and then get business from them the rest of my career. So should you call attorneys and ask about professional fiduciaries? I don't think that's the way to go. I'd say that when you have a case and there's a professional fiduciary involved, make a point of meeting the professional fiduciary, get their contact info, make the extra effort to reach out to them, show up in court, hope they're there. Ask them if you can help them in any way. Ask them to lunch. Attorneys are now subject to COVID restrictions, whatever that means to you, whatever that means in your area. In LA, you really can't ask people out to lunch. It's very weird still. Very weird vibe to ask attorneys in LA or Beverly Hills to lunch. Not in Torrance. I'm guessing not in Newport Beach. I don't know. I don't live there. But I'm telling you, in LA or Beverly Hills, you ask an attorney to lunch, they're going to think you're an idiot. And I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying I wouldn't do it in LA. Yulita asks, how do you get 20 good attorneys? One at a time. One at a time. Any relationship building is a process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think you have to look for the opportunity to create value for other people. I tell attorneys all the time, call me, I'm glad to get research for you. Yes, I could give them the app or I could introduce them to my title rep. I want them to call me so I do the research for them. And generally I don't do it. My assistant or VA does the actual work, but I want them to call me to get it to them. So how do you get 20 good attorneys? There's a class that Probate Mastery has called EARN, which is Earn Attorney Referrals Now. And I actually did a segment on that, on how to work the court. So if you're interested in that class, and I know he's bundling the Probate Mastery and the EARN together. So that might be a way to help you if you're looking to invest money in some coaching and some training. It might be a good source for you. I also, on my YouTube channel, I have some videos on how to get attorney referrals. I also interview attorneys on my YouTube channel and on this call sometimes and ask them how people should go about getting business from them. So hopefully I can help you create that resource and hopefully I'm that resource for you. And then Dave says that early in his business, he got most of attorney clients through Kiwanis and Lions Club. True. Now the challenge there is they're not going to be mostly estate planning or mostly probate. There'll be a wide variety of attorneys when you network professionally at those groups. And I think that having been to a bunch of Kiwanis and Lions Clubs in my life, I would say you don't want to go there and be the guy who's just there slitting people's throats with your business card. You want to be, if you're Kiwanis and Lions both do great work. You want to be a service to the community through these organizations, and you'll meet good attorneys through that. But yeah, David, that definitely networking is a great way to meet attorneys or anybody that you can refer with through service organizations. Same with church or synagogue or anything else where you're being a service, you'll meet people who are helping the community for sure. Okay, let me just check the online. I don't see the online questions. Let me go back to, I think I'm caught up with the chat box. Let me go to the social media questions. So I get asked this question a lot too from wholesalers. Can you wholesale a property under limited authority? So first, what's limited authority? Limited authority means that the person in charge, the administrator, the executor, cannot sell the property on their own and can't just file a notice of proposed action, but they get the property in escrow. They get the buyer to waive all contingencies and raise their deposit to 10%, then take it to court and have the court approve the sale. And one of the steps in approving the sale is the judge will turn to the audience and say, is there anybody here who will pay more than this guy or gal by 5% plus $500 in California? The rules vary in different states. What we call a court overbid process in California, where the judge will say, okay, you have to meet certain procedures when you sell the property. There's state law and there's local rules. And if it meets all those, the judge will say, okay, this house is, you sell the house for $500,000, great. Is there anybody here who will pay $525, $500 or more? And if somebody's there with a cashier's check for 10% of that, and they're willing to bid with no contingencies, then there's a bidding war between those two processes. So can you wholesale a property when it's going to be overbid? The answer is it can be done. So, but it's hard. So if you wholesale it before the court date, obviously who's going to pay you money? Somebody can overbid you. You might wholesale it on the condition that they don't get overbid. That's one way you could wholesale it. So if you get a good deal with somebody and they pay you a fee, and they take it to court and they win the property, they might pay you a wholesale fee and agree to that. Number one. Number two, can you bid on property as a wholesaler? Can you bid on the property, tie it up, and then bring another entity? And the answer there is, well, yeah, but you have to show up with 10% cashier's check. You're waiving all contingencies. So you're either going to be able to sell the property or you're going to lose your deposit and maybe even have damages. So I wouldn't, unless I knew it was a really good deal, want to close and reclose on it. But I would definitely say you could wholesale before the court, but just know that somebody could overbid and your deal's going to get taken away. Richard says, after joining a Chamber of Commerce, I'm meeting with attorneys through Chamber of Commerce. What I have has a monthly breakfast. Chamber of Commerce are great in many areas. Richard, where do you do business? I used to belong to a chamber in Diamond Bar where I used to do business. Great organization. Again, I think that from where I sit, you don't want to be the guy or gal who's just slitting everybody's throat with your business card. You want to be, if you go to the chamber, you're there to support your community. Along the way, you're meeting people and you do business with them. Okay, next question. You're in Towson, Maryland. So can't say I know Towson very well, but I would definitely say good for you if you're involved in the chamber in Towson. And I promise you that if you do good work for the business community of Towson, Maryland, I promise you'll get more business as a result of that. That's just how life works. Okay, next, I think this will be our last question. Unless somebody pops up with a burning question. And I get this one a lot too. So we had a brand new agent. Where do I start? And Richard, I love when people agree with me. You'll find there's nothing I agree with more than people who agree with me. I get this a lot. Experienced agent. I'm far behind. I should have started probate a long time ago. Can you help me get started by any chance? So I also started probate late in my career. I only started 3.5 years ago. I was 60 years old. I've been in business already for over 30 years. Not by choice. I had gone into management with the idea that at some point I would end up as a partner and due to some, I think, maybe bad decisions on my part and bad choices of who I worked with, found myself unable to do that and start back in production and went into probate at that time. I would say if you're an experienced agent, the advantage you have is two things. One, you already know how to sell. You already know how to sell houses. You already know how to list houses. Number two, you have a Rolodex of people that know, like, and trust you. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, not that again. Everybody tells me to call my sphere of influence. Everybody tells me to call my sphere of influence. I'm going to tell you the fastest way to get probate business, if you're an experienced agent, is to call every single, well, first, learn something about probate. How to avoid probate is the best topic. For example, estate planning, living trusts. Learn a little bit about that and then share that content with your database. I promise you, if you're experienced, you have a database of 200 or 300 people, if you learn something about how to avoid probate and the importance of it, and you share that with everybody you know in your database, everybody who knows, likes, and trusts you, I promise you there's probate business for you. That's how it worked for me. I took the all leads class back when Chad was teaching it, who's now probate mastery. And I started calling everybody I knew. And I got as far as the D's. I remember who it was. I called this guy. He was an attorney, not a probate attorney. And he said to me, well, interesting. I don't really have any probate business, but I have a client who has a question about the title and the lot line. Can you help her? Now, my training as a Mike Ferry agent was that's not what I do. But my new training, which was I'm your real estate expert from the front sidewalk to the back fence. If you have a problem, call me. Either I know the answer or I'll get the answer. I'm either the guy or I'll get the guy or gal to help you. So when he asked me that question, I said, yeah, I can help. He gave me a number. I called this lady, nice widow. Been married 50 years and lost her husband. Had this rental property. It was a 6-unit. Has some sort of a lot line question on the phone. She says to me, it's hard to describe. Can you come look at it? Again, being a Mike Ferry agent, I would never go without a pre-listing package, a pre-qualified listing appointment. But again, the new Bill Gross, yeah, you have a problem, I'll help you out. I drive over there. It's in East LA, so it's about a 45-minute drive. We walk the property for about half an hour. Nice, sweet old lady, older than me. Anybody older than me is old. We walk the property, and after about half hour, she turns to me and just says, I don't really care about all this. Can you just sell this for me? And my listing presentation was, yeah, sure. That was it. That's what you call a 5-second listing presentation. Not even the 1 minute that Mike teaches. Just, yeah, sure, I could list it. And we did. And I sold it, and she had a proceeds check over $500,000. I made the decision, unlike my prior training, to drive the check from the escrow to her house on a Friday afternoon in East LA. It was about an hour and a half drive. Got there, handed her the check. She started crying. She said to me, I've always wanted to move to be with my sister in Arizona. Can you help sell this, which was her residence at the time? And I sold that. So I had 2 listing presentations. Both of them were basically, yeah, sure, why not? And I sold about $1.2 million worth of house from calling my database, just offering them all the advantages of avoiding probate. So I know it works. I have a video on my YouTube channel about how to get started if you're an experienced agent. And I would say to you that the key is get some information of value to your database, share it with them regularly, and you have more business than you could ever imagine. I promise you. If you saw the movie Catch Me If You Can, there's a part in the story where he is a substitute teacher in a history class. And they asked him, how could you possibly be a teacher in a class that you never took? And he said, I just read 1 chapter ahead of the class. And they assumed I knew the material. So for your database, you don't have to learn everything about probate or estate planning. You just need to know a little something. You can give them a value. And so I say to experienced agents, start with that. We all know the number one way to get business is the people we already know. Rather than buying stranger data, calling strangers and getting them to know, like, and trust you, call those that know, like, and trust you, and find the ones that need your help in real estate. Help them, and you'll sell houses. Okay, I went a little late today. I don't see any of the burning questions. Was this helpful today, the question and answer process? I don't like to do it all the time. I like to interview people more. But was it of value? Do me a favor, put in the chat box. If it was good and helpful, put yes. If not, let's be honest. I'm not selling this, so I don't really care. I want to put on a good event every week, and I want to help you guys be successful. If the answer is no, write me an email, text me, tell me what that wasn't of value to you or was a waste of time. I'm okay. I'm a big boy. I can handle that. So let's wrap this up. A couple free resources. I have a Facebook group, Probate Experts in Facebook, free. You can go on there and ask questions, engage there. Usually when people ask you questions, I ask to go there to answer it. That way other people see it. Or come back, invite your friends. We do this every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's probateweekly.com. Love to have you live if you want to participate and ask questions. That's always best. You can watch on the replay as well. You'll get a copy of the link to you afterwards. So thank you as always for being on the call. I really appreciate you guys. And as always, make